So, hey everybody, hope everyone's doing well. This is Anish back at you. And so, here we are today with the travel stop planner, the smart travel stop planner. And just to remind you, everyone, what exactly we were doing is if you're going on a long road trip, let's say between Houston and Dallas. You can see that yesterday we went through the back end code a little bit, and then we came up with this particular result. So you can see that it looks for smart locations where you can stop and for rest and for restrooms. And we used a bunch of criteria in the back end, like the number of reviews, the total of stars that it has. So the higher it's rated, the more it comes up in our results. And you can see here that Bucky's, which is probably one of the best in Texas, is listed as one of the stops. And it's a 3.5 hour journey. So we are suggesting to stop here at Bucky's for a clean restroom experience. And so this is where we were at. And the place where I left yesterday, everyone, with sort of a question was, okay, so now let me try doing, Seattle to New York. Okay. All right. So it's literally across the country. So let's go ahead and try and plan stops. So, first of all, you can see that it's going to take a long time. Okay. To get any kind of results, it's going to take a while because it is going to go through different points within these polylines between Seattle and New York and figure out what are the optimal stops. The problem now is this particular run is going to take a long time, and API gateway has a runtime of 29 to 30 seconds. That's it. And so because it's not able to complete it, it comes with an HTTP error. Okay. So the question you were asking is, how do we get past this particular issue? So here is what I'm going to plan on today. Again, this is the twist this week where we are going to look at. We used a Lambda function fronted by API Gateway, but we were doing synchronous processing. And so let's go ahead and do an asynchronous processing, where what we are going to do is we are going to take our uh, Lambda function, and we are going to create a new Lambda function called a maps trigger. Okay, so what that is going to do is that's a maps trigger function that I have written somewhere, and you can see that if I can get to it. So the first thing that's going to happen is that maps trigger function is going to get triggered by an API. And so here you can see that there's an API gateway, and what we are doing is this is going to get triggered, and it's going to trigger event bridge. Okay, it's going to trigger an event bridge rule, and event bridge rule, once it's going to get triggered, it's going to trigger the backend Lambda function that can now asynchronously process. And the last thing we are going to do is we are going to have a polling function that's going to keep polling for up to 1 minute to see if a new result has come, if a new result has come. Okay, and so if it comes, then it's going to accept that particular result. So hopefully this makes sense. So let's go ahead and first test the maps trigger function, which is going to be an API gateway that is going to go from the client. Okay, and so what happens is once you trigger this, it immediately comes back with a response, with a 200 response saying the process has started. On the back end, what is going to happen is, like I said, there is going to be event bridge. So here is event bridge, and we are going to have an event bridge rule, where if you go into rules, you can see that you can create a rule. Here I've created a maps rule. These two have to exactly match. The source is the maps trigger, and this is the maps trigger rule. This has to exactly match in the Lambda function. Okay, so if you go into the code, you can see here that the event source is maps trigger and the event detail type is maps rule, and the bus is default. So this is the resource based permission that you have to give for event bridge. Okay, so once you give this particular permission, this maps trigger and the maps trigger rule are going to get triggered. All right. So once they are triggered, the target is now going to be nothing. I haven't set anything yet because right now what we are doing is we are having API gateway to our Lambda function. So now let us go ahead into our Lambda function and change the trigger to be event bridge. Okay, so our main Lambda function was called travel stops. So this was our main Lambda function. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here. I'm going to remove the API gateway trigger. Okay. And what I'm then going to do is I'm going to add a trigger and I'm going to choose event bridge. And I have an existing rule, which is the maps rule. And you can see here the source and detail type has to match exactly what came in the first place. And then now I have an event bridge trigger. Okay, I have to make a slight change in the code which I've made for myself, and I'll explain what that is. So because right now I'm going to get an input from event bridge, so what is going to happen is I'm going to hit the API gateway is going to trigger event bridge is going to pass the post data onto the Lambda function. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and copy this code. The only major difference is here I have if event source is matched maps triggered, then an event bridge trigger is detected, and I'm going to get the event.get and detail.get. Okay, for the origin, I'm going to get detail.get of origin and detail.get of destination. Okay, so that's really the only change. So let me go ahead and deploy this. Okay, so now what has happened is the maps trigger is going to get triggered. It's going to trigger event bridge. Event bridge is going to trigger this Lambda function. And this Lambda function now can run for a longer time. Remember, Lambda function can run up to 15 minutes. Okay, the only problem is API gateway times out. And so what we are now going to do is, where does the result of all of this go? This goes into DynamoDB. Okay, so there was a DynamoDB called plan travel stops where all this particular output was being sent. Okay, so within plans travel stops. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a polling function. The polling function is going to poll the DynamoDB table for up to 1 minute. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. And so here you can see that this is what the polling function looks like. So it's going to go here, and what it's going to do is from now up to the since minutes is going to be 1. So from now to 1 minute before, it is going to keep looking at if a new entry was created, if a new entry was created, and if a new entry was created, it is going to send it back to the client. Okay, so the last thing is I have to make a front end change as well. That's the part I'm not going to do. So I'm going to test it in Postman to show you all of this works together. Okay, so we have changed the architecture to client hitting a Lambda function, a trigger function, which is going to trigger event bridge, which is going to trigger the backend Lambda function, which can take its own time. And then the client is also going to send asynchronously another API call to API gateway, which is going to be a polling function. Okay, so this is the polling function, which is also an API gateway, and the polling function is going to be polling again and again and again with DynamoDB to see if a new entry has been created. Okay, so to summarize, let's go in here and let's do the first trigger, which is 2B5PY something. And so here you can see that I have, let's say, Seattle to, let's do New York. Okay, um, New York, New York, or maybe, yeah, okay, let's try New York. I hope it gets done in 1 minute. Okay, so that's the maximum time limit I have as well. All right, so this is going to the maps trigger function, and when I click send, you can see here that the processing started asynchronously and check results back later. Okay, so now we can go in here, and what we can do is this is the next API, which is going to be the maps polling API. And so here you can see that the maps polling API is going to be with API gateway trigger 8s32 something something. So let's go ahead and keep refreshing this again and again and again. Okay, in reality, um, I send this every 5 seconds from the client. Okay, so right now it's saying nothing new has been found in the last 1 minute, but that's the whole point. It's running. Okay, in the back end, it's running. As it goes through, we'll see that a new output comes through. Okay. All right. So we have to refresh a few times because remember, there's lots of travel stops that are going to be found between Seattle and New York, and it is going to take quite a bit of time. All right. So here you can see that all the results of Seattle and New York were coming up. Here's Rochester. Here is all different things. Okay. So you start from Seattle and then um, move towards New York, and you can see what are all the different possibilities that are appearing here. And so the last thing that we have to do is change this in the client to have asynchronous API calls to two APIs. All right. So this is how you overcome a problem just with Lambda itself when you have an issue with these kind of timeouts by API gateways. You can write a polling function, and you can see here that in DynamoDB, new entries would have been created. So this is where I was saying that you can actually get new outcomes as these times go by, and it's going to fill up the DynamoDB table. Okay, so here is planned travel stops. If I go into explore table items, and then let me go here, so you can see here that, oh, this is UTC time. So you can see that all of this was created 45. So pretty much just about now. Okay, it was all created, and these are all the different travel stops that were created. Okay, so here you can see that this was Petro Travel Station in Spokane, which is on the way, which is on I-90, and so on and so forth. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And with that, that's the end of today's video, everyone. And so tomorrow we'll be done. We are just going to deploy this into Amplify, and I'm going to show you two ways of doing this. One is through a local zip deployment. We just take our build and zip it up and deploy it on Amplify. The other way we are going to do this is do it through GitHub and GitHub Actions to do a full CI/CD pipeline. All right. So hopefully today's video was useful. And if you have any questions, please post it on the comments below. I'd love to answer them, especially when topics like this get a little bit more and more murky. This app, I'm not going to deploy it for the future because I need some funding for this, because the Google Map Places API is it's a very pricey service. So I'm just doing this for a demo purpose, and I'll show that it's done. But at the end of it, I'm going to pull it down. All right. So with that, check out our first couple of week apps, which was Cable Snap and Layover Genie. That's in the App Store as well. Both of them are now in the App Store. This is going to be our third app for our 7 app 7 week challenge. Have a good rest of your day, everyone, and see you tomorrow for the final episode of this web application development.